Hello and welcome to Byju's Exam Prep IAS. A very warm good evening to everyone. I hope all of you are doing good. I welcome you all to today's class of the weekly current affairs webinar. As you know, in this class, every Tuesday we have this live session in which we try and discuss some of the most important news stories from the past week or so. I thank you all for joining in on time. We'll just wait for a couple of minutes, let everyone join in, and then we'll begin the class. Thank you so much. Hello, hello, hello. Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Good evening, good evening, good evening. Hello. Perfect. So, if you've just joined in, once again, I welcome you all to today's webinar. Very, very warm good evening. I hope all of your preparation is going right on track. Not a lot of time remains between today and your prelims examination of 2023. I also hope that all of you are giving the prelims test series that is ongoing. I hope that every Sunday you do attempt the test and see your progress, because that is the best way to ensure that you are right on track with your preparation. Just in case you have still not started giving the test on every Sunday, make sure that you do start this habit, because that is the best way to ensure that you are right on track. Now, let's see what exactly are the topics that we will be covering today. So these are the total of 9 topics that we have taken up. Some of these are very factual, where you have to just remember certain facts. Some others require a lot more discussion. So we'll start our discussion with the concept of green steel. It has been in the news for various reasons. One reason being that the government of India is thinking that green steel is the way to go. On the other hand, many international agencies believe that green steel right now is not feasible to be used on a large scale. Then we'll be discussing about the child marriage issue. There has been a court case in the Supreme Court, especially. There has been a challenge made to a High Court judgment, wherein the Supreme Court will have to decide whether or not the minimum age for marriage in India should be the same across religions, or what is it that the court has to keep in mind while deciding the minimum age. Then we'll be discussing about the reward project with respect to the government of Karnataka. It's related to a watershed development project. Then the global risk report that has come out, GSP, generalized system of preferences, that has been in the news, and the government of India wants to continue this or wants to resume this. Then healing of the ozone. The good news is the ozone layer is healing over Antarctica. Then Europe turning towards LNG over the Russian gas. We'll be discussing this also, the implications of this decision. Article 176, that is the governor's address. What happened in the case of Tamil Nadu? The governor walked out of the assembly. What exactly is this? And then we'll be discussing about the BIND scheme. That is again a scheme related to Prasar Bharati. The government of India wants to improve the infrastructure and the coverage of Prasar Bharati across the entire country, especially nearby the border areas, nearby the border villages. So all these are the topics that we will be discussing today. So let's not wait any further. Let's start with the very first topic that we have in news. That is the topic of green steel. Now, the interesting part is, if today you try and Google green steel and see what are the news stories relating to green steel in the past few days, interestingly, you will get 2 different types of headlines. One headline is this article. That article was published in Down to Earth. So Down to Earth published this article saying that green steel is still not a feasible idea. There has been a report by the IEA saying that green steel is still not feasible. On the other hand, at the same time, there's another news story, that is the government of India thinking of making it compulsory to use green steel only. So let's first understand what is green steel exactly and what is the idea behind it. It is very similar to the concept of green hydrogen. Remember, in the last webinar also, when we had the current affair discussion, we discussed the idea of green hydrogen as well. Now, what was green hydrogen? Green hydrogen is just normal hydrogen that can be used as a fuel. The only difference is to manufacture green hydrogen, we only use renewable sources of energy. That was the only difference between green hydrogen and other forms of hydrogen. Unlike other forms of hydrogen, green hydrogen is used, it is produced using renewable form of energy, as simple as that. So it does not harm the environment. Exactly the same is the concept with green steel. It is not a different kind of a steel. It's not that it will have different properties or it will have some different applications, nothing like that. The only difference between green steel and any other steel is that green steel will be made rather using renewable sources of energy, using clean sources of energy. That is the only difference between green steel and other forms of steel. Now, the IEA says that the idea of green steel is good. See, steel is a very, very important component in different sectors of our lives. You can talk about any construction, you can talk about any new equipment that is being made, machinery that is being made, vehicles, any technological advancement that you talk about. Steel is an integral component of almost everything. And without having a good supply of steel, you cannot expect a country's manufacturing sector to go forward. Because the steel is used in such large quantity, it is obviously advisable to have a clean source of steel. And that is why nations around the world have been working towards green steel so that it can be produced without harming the environment. Now, this report that has come out, it has come out from IEA, that is International Energy Agency, which says that green steel is still not yet commercially viable. As I told you earlier, green steel is nothing but just steel that is produced using renewable energy. Nothing apart from that. It is just like any other normal steel. Now understand this, and we discussed this earlier as well. Whenever we have any new technology, be it green steel, be it green hydrogen, be it any new technology, solar, wind energy, etc., new technologies in the beginning are always expensive because you are still making machines, etc., to produce this on a large scale. You are still experimenting with it. So any new technology, when it is adopted in the first few initial years, will always be expensive, and it will always be difficult for it to be accepted on a large scale. That is why for any new technology to be adopted, you require the government to give certain subsidies. You require the cost of those kind of things to reduce. For example, in India also, you would know, ever since electric vehicles, electric cars, EVs have been introduced, many governments have been giving subsidies on EVs. Many governments say, okay, we'll reduce the price, or you also get income tax rebate if you buy electric vehicle instead of a normal car. That is because electric vehicles are usually more expensive. The government wants to make it affordable, so they are giving subsidy so that people shift towards EV. Similarly, because green steel will be expensive to manufacture right now, it will only be adopted if the government gives subsidy. If the government says, okay, we are giving you subsidy in between so that we can reduce the cost of production of steel so that people can accept that. But right now, government has not said that they will be giving any subsidy whatsoever. Now, as you know, steel actually is produced on a very, very large scale in nations such as India, China, etc. It requires a lot of energy to produce steel. What kind of energy is used to produce steel? That is what decides whether it is green steel or normal steel. If you are using energy by burning coal, if you are using energy by oil, gas, etc., to manufacture steel, then you are harming the environment. On the other hand, if you are using renewable form of energy, if you are using, let's say, hydro energy, wind energy, solar energy to produce steel, then automatically it becomes green steel, as simple as that. So green steel is not different from any other kind of steel in its application or in its properties. The only difference is the manufacturing process. The only difference is in the manufacturing process. Are you using renewable energy or are you using energy which is non-renewable? This IEA report that has come out, it has said that steel, cement, if you manufacture this using renewable energy, it will still be very, very costly. So you cannot expect the world automatically to shift towards green steel or green cement. The IEA document says it will take at least 20 to 70 years from the prototype to the commercial point of view. Now, this is exactly the same as you remember in case of green hydrogen. The government of India is focusing a lot on green hydrogen. We have already announced a green hydrogen mission also. But many experts say that green hydrogen today will be too expensive. The cost of green hydrogen right now is close to 300 to 400 rupees per kg. And in order for green hydrogen to become affordable in the long run, it would have to come down to about 100 rupees per kg. Only then the people would be able to afford it. And it will only become 100 rupees per kg in the next 50 to 70 years. Similar is the case here with the green steel, as you can see. It will become commercially viable in 20 to 70 years. And this is nothing surprising. As I told you, whenever any new technology is adopted, this is the same curve that we always have. Things are always very expensive in the beginning. You saw what happened in case of solar. You saw what happened in case of wind. You can take multiple examples. Things become cheaper with time when the scale increases, when more and more people start adopting it. Right now, in the field of renewable energy, as expected, China is the leader of the world. China is the country that is producing most of the solar cells, the solar batteries, wind plants, etc. that you require all around the world. Not just this, in order to have these kind of manufacturing processes on a large scale, countries also require lithium as per the IEA report. Lithium is a very important component in most of the electric vehicles, batteries, etc. For lithium, mostly the concentration around the world is in nations such as Australia, Chile, and China. Do you remember just this week there was another very interesting news? The news was China has signed an agreement with the Taliban government. Did you see that? There was a news this week that China has signed an agreement with the Taliban government. What is the agreement? The agreement is that China will be investing about close to $600 million in Afghanistan to search for oil and other minerals. Many experts believe that Afghanistan might have a lot of minerals, including lithium, gold, oil, etc. Experts believe that Afghanistan's wealth in terms of mineral resources would be close to $3 trillion. And that is why it is extremely important for nations such as China to have friendly relationship with Afghanistan. So China also knows that if they get hold of lithium, these kind of products are very, very important for the future to manufacture renewable energy appliances, to manufacture EV, etc. Then we also have products such as cobalt, which are extremely important, which are mainly found in Congo. There is also one very interesting thing. I don't know if you have realized this or not. Usually, we assume that if a certain nation has a lot of resources, mineral resources that is, the nation will automatically be very rich. You take an example of Saudi Arabia, you take an example of Qatar, you take an example of most of the Middle Eastern nations, and we believe that mostly if the nations have a lot of mineral wealth, they would be very rich. But that is not always the case. Mineral wealth also has a curse with it. I can give you multiple examples. In India, look at Jharkhand. Jharkhand is the state with almost most of the mineral resources of India. Even then, there is very little political stability in Jharkhand. The governments don't complete 5 years. We don't have a lot of good development, even though the state has so many mineral resources. At international level, go and look at Venezuela. Venezuela has some of the largest proven oil reserves in the world, and look at the situation in Venezuela. So just having a lot of mineral resources doesn't mean the country will be very rich. Look at Afghanistan. Look at Congo, as you can see here. Just having a lot of resources doesn't really mean you'll automatically be rich. It depends on how these resources are being used. Now, Government of India is trying to give a push to all these initiatives, be it green steel, green hydrogen, etc. As we have discussed multiple times earlier, we have already started the National Green Hydrogen Mission also. The government of India has also launched Pradhan Mantri Urja Ganga project to provide gas to all steel plants located in this area. So we are giving a push to steel as well. As you know, India and many other nations around the world face a very tough competition from China. So what happens is steel is something that is used in almost all sectors in the industry. China produces a lot of steel at a very cheap cost. They dump their steel all around the world in different countries. So many nations want to compete with Chinese steel manufacturing as well. As I told you in the beginning, this week there were two important news about green steel. One, the IEA saying it is not commercially viable. The other news, the government of India saying that government might make green steel mandatory to bring down pollution when it comes to steel manufacturing. But that is not really commercially viable right now, as we saw that the IEA is saying it will take 50 to 70 years at least to bring down the cost for this kind of green steel. Let's see if we can answer this question, then I will take some of your doubts. Read this question carefully. Which of the following are some important pollutants released by the steel industry in India? You have all these options given in front of you. This question, in fact, has been asked by UPSC. It's a previous year question. Let me see if you can answer this. Read this carefully. Let me know if you have read it. I'll start your time of 15 seconds. Read this? Okay. Only Shreya has read this. Anyone else? Done? Okay, Bhavya. Perfect. Okay. Okay, perfect. Your time starts now. %46 people get this right. This is actually D. All these are pollutants from the steel industry in India. To reduce these pollutants, to reduce the pollution that comes out from steel manufacturing, this is the reason why not just India, but many nations around the world are trying to shift somehow towards green steel. So the correct answer here is D. This was a question asked by the UPSC in the prelims examination as well. Before I move on to the second topic for it, let me take a few doubts. I have a doubt from Saurabh. How to revise the webinar classes? Like you revise everything else. See, these webinar classes, the Tuesday webinars that you have, mainly cover the weekly current affairs. So the best way to revise this would be to go to the monthly current affair magazine that we have, because most of our topics are covered there. So once you read that, that will be a good revision for you. As also, the best way to revise is always to solve as many questions as possible. So the more test series that you attempt, the more questions that you attempt, the better it would be for you to remember that. Sansar has a question. But sir, is it right time now to move towards such expensive idea while our economy is still in recovery mode from post-COVID effect? There are a couple of things to look at it. Yes, our economy has still not completely recovered. But then again, the climate threat that we have, the climate change issue that we are facing right now, the global warming problem, it will not wait for the countries to recover from COVID and then it will start. See, global warming, climate change has not hit a pause button that thinking, oh, you are tired right now, okay, I will also not run. They are still going on at a fast pace. So every government, including the Indian government, would have to take a call on where exactly is it that you want to focus on. We do not have enough time to now start saying, okay, we will not focus on climate change right now. Let's focus on building economy. Both of these have to go hand in hand somewhere. Plus, any new technology, let's say green steel or green hydrogen, whenever any new technology comes up, it also produces jobs. So when government invests money to have these kind of power plants set up or these kind of steel manufacturing units set up, it will also give more jobs to people having skill in that area. Then I have a question from Vishakha. Sir, if Jharkhand has so many mineral resources, why doesn't the central government focus on its development? It's not that they don't focus on development. The example that I gave you was that there is also curse of mineral wealth. Africa has a lot of mineral wealth, but it is very unstable, it is very poor. So what I was trying to say is that it is not necessary that mineral wealth would always lead to rich state or a rich society. It's not that central government doesn't focus on Jharkhand. Central government has to focus on the entire country. For Jharkhand, there's a Jharkhand government that has to focus on there. But just that because of certain political developments, certain political scenarios in the state, we have never had a situation where Jharkhand or Odisha, that is a mineral belt of India, has developed so much. We cannot say that the government or central government should focus on only certain states. Central government does focus on certain states by giving it the special status. For Jharkhand, I don't think the central government especially has to focus on that. Perfect. Let's move on to the second topic that we have for you today. The second topic is that a matter has again gone to the Supreme Court, where the Supreme Court has to decide, can an underage Muslim girl marry after attaining puberty? Now let's try and understand what exactly is this issue all about. A few months back, there was a judgment given by the Punjab and Haryana High Court. Please understand this. The Punjab and Haryana High Court had given a judgment saying that if a Muslim girl has attained puberty, then she is free to get married even if she is under the age of 18 years. Now, what is the logic behind it? See, in India, as you know, we do not have a uniform civil code, meaning that on personal matters, matters of marriage, divorce, inheritance of property, on personal matters in India, the laws are still different for different religions. So, for example, for Hindu religion, the law might say that the minimum age for a girl to get married, let's say, is 18. For Muslim religion, that is not the same. For them, the concept of when the girl should be allowed to marry is when she hits the age of puberty. The number of years are not really fixed, but in Muslim law, it's more important that if the girl hits puberty, that is when the girl should get married, or that is when the girl can get married. Now, if a Muslim girl hits puberty before 18, even then would she be allowed to get married or not? That is a question that has come in. Now, the Punjab and Haryana High Court has declared that a Muslim girl can marry, is free to marry if she attains puberty, even if she is not 18 years of age. Against this judgment, the National Commission for Protection of Child Rights has moved to the Supreme Court, saying that this goes against the idea of child marriage. This, in fact, leads to child marriage because a girl is being married below the age of 18 years. So the Supreme Court should come up in between. Now, the Supreme Court is hearing this matter. As I told you earlier, in India, the minimum age of marriage is determined by different personal laws that we have. It is not fixed for every religion. For example, for Hinduism, it is different. For Islam, it is different. For Muslims, the criteria is attaining puberty, which is assumed when the bride or groom turns 15. So because of different personal laws, because of absence of any uniform civil code in India, we have a situation where we have different types of ages depending upon different region of when the person can get married. Now in India, we do have multiple laws to protect child marriage or to ensure that child marriage does not take place. We have the Prohibition of Child Marriage Act of 2006, which says that any marriage below the prescribed age is illegal and those who are forcing child marriage can also be punished. Not just this, we also have Protection of Children from Sexual Offences Act of 2012. That means any sexual activity by anyone who is a minor, that is below 18 years of age, can be punished. The Supreme Court also in 2017 in the Shaira Bano case had actually gone ahead and said that triple talaq is illegal. So people are saying that if the Supreme Court can interfere in triple talaq matter, even before the government made the law, the Supreme Court was the one that went ahead and said that triple talaq should not be allowed. So experts say if the Supreme Court can intervene in the triple talaq matter, then they can intervene in this as well. The court cannot say, or the court should not say it's a religious matter, we'll not come in between. As per the experts, if the Supreme Court can come in between in matters of triple talaq, they should come in between this as well and not allow a girl to get married below the age of 18, irrespective of whatever the religion of the girl is. As I told you in the beginning, this is still a matter that is under the observation in the Supreme Court. So it's not that the Supreme Court has decided something. The Supreme Court will look into this matter and decide whether or not we should actually allow this to happen or not. Now, just to give you an idea, if you see the legal age of marriage around the entire world, there are different nations that have different types of ideas. For example, in China, the legal age for marriage for girls is 22, for girls is 20, for boys it is 22. India usually follows the same kind of age as most other countries. In India, mostly for girls, the minimum age is 18, for boys it is 21. Mostly around the world, 18 and 18 remains the age, but again in India, it really depends on religion to religion because of absence of the Uniform Civil Code. In fact, this is one of the reasons or one of the demands why Uniform Civil Code has been asked by many people in India. Because in the absence of the Uniform Civil Code, you have such a situation where you see girls from different religion actually being forced to marry or asked to marry even before they hit the age of 18 years. Marriage is something, or the minimum age of marriage is something that has been debated in India around the entire century. In fact, in the pre-independence era also, when the British were here, we had multiple laws to increase the minimum age of marriage for women. And these kind of laws have usually been debated very widely in the society. Many times, when the courts try to increase the minimum age of marriage, or when the governments try to increase the minimum age of marriage, we have a situation that people belonging to that community start criticizing this decision. Because see, these kind of topics, marriage, divorce, inheritance of property, many people take it very, very personally. They take it as a part of their religion and they do not want any interference in those kind of issues. Similar is the case here as well. Now, there is another aspect to this debate as well. It's not just a religious aspect. There's also an aspect of health. See, it is very, very well known around the entire world that if you start sexual activity at a very young age, if you have girls getting married, for example, at 15, 16, 17, there is a much higher chance that the girl would undergo certain physical complications in the very near future. Because when the girls, for example, are forced to get married at a very, very young age, and then following that, they're forced to have a baby at a very young age, it has a very, very negative impact on their body. Since the body is not getting enough nutrition for her needs, for the needs of the baby, it actually leads to a lot of complications. It leads to a very high child mortality rate also. It leads to maternity problems as well. So having at least a sound minimum age for marriage is not just a debate for religion, it is also a debate for social justice. It's also a debate for the society as a whole. And that is why many people right now are seeing what the Supreme Court will decide. As you know, in 2021, the government of India introduced a prohibition of child marriage amendment bill. That was to increase the age of marriage for women and ensure harmony in the age limit across the different religions. But again, this has been criticized as unconstitutional. This debate is still on whether or not we should have a same minimum age for marriage for women in India or not. This is a kind of question that you can expect. What are the continued challenges for women in India against time and space? Again, this question has been asked by UPSC in 2019. Now, before we take up the next topic, let me quickly see a few doubts. In fact, I think there are a lot of doubts from this topic. Many people have asked. Let me try and take these up one by one. Okay, Prakhar has a question. Should India also invest in Afghanistan? India has invested a lot of money in Afghanistan. I don't know why you're thinking we have not. Their dams, the Salma Dam is made by India. A big part of their parliament building is made by India. We do have a great relationship with Afghanistan. Just that ever since Taliban has come back to power, we have been shy of that because Taliban's relationship with India historically has not been great. But ever since there was Afghanistan government, India did invest a lot of money there. Then I have a question from Nikhil. When a boy isn't mature enough to marry till he reaches the age of 21 years, then how does a girl become mature enough to marry at just 18 years or at puberty? Isn't this gender discrimination because of patriarchal mindset? Difficult to say. I won't say it's because of patriarchal mindset. Patriarchy doesn't have to do anything with that. But it's just a conception around the entire society that in a marriage, the boy has to be slightly older because they would have to, it's an assumption that they would have to go and work and they would have to earn money and then bring it home. But again, I won't say it's gender discrimination kind of a thing. In most nations around the world, either the ages are same 18 or 18 or they're slightly in favor of men. But yes, I don't see any scientific reason as such why males should be allowed to get married at 21 and female at 18. If it were to me, I would change it, but there is no explanation that is given by the government for this. Kavya is saying, isn't it a violation to the common laws of equality for all? No, when you say equality for all, that is not absolute. There is always space for different personal laws as we have in India. Uniform civil code has not been introduced in India so far. Once we have that, we may have it. But even other laws are not really same for all. Some people have immunity in certain types. Some people have different types of laws applicable on them. So the idea of equality for all is not absolute equality. Then I have a question from just a second. If laws are different for different regions, then what's the credibility of legal fixed age for marriage of girls? So basically what happens is when you say that the government of India has fixed the legal age of marriage for girls, it does not override the personal laws as such. So the personal laws actually remain separate, and the Supreme Court is the one that has to take a call on whether the personal laws are the ones that will have a final say or not. So the personal laws in many of the cases have actually been underlined or have actually been seen as overriding the government of India's laws. It usually depends on the Supreme Court of how they interpret it. Then I have a question. Mohammed is saying, please explain habeas corpus in simple terms. Habeas corpus, as you know, is a writ. Habeas corpus simply means if you have been detained illegally by the authorities without any reason, without any cause, then you should be released. That is habeas corpus. Shaimel is saying, what is the difference between illegal and unconstitutional? As the name says, unconstitutional means something that goes against the constitution. Illegal means something that goes against the normal law of the parliament. So parliament passing a law is separate, and constitution having certain provisions is separate. So if you do something that is against the constitution, that is unconstitutional. If you do something that goes against a parliamentary law, that is illegal. Then I have a question from Manasvi. Is uniform civil code good or bad? It's not easy to say anything is good or bad. Every topic has pros and cons. As a UPSC aspirant, you would also know. It's not just so simple to say this is good or this is bad. Everything has pros and cons. For uniform civil code also, there are pros, there are cons. Simple. Then I have a question from Pravez. Is Child Marriage Act of 2006 prevailing over personal laws? If no, then what is the benefit of bringing such a law? See, when such laws are introduced, they mainly are left to the interpretation of the court in many of the cases. And as we see in this case also, it is the Supreme Court that will take a final call on what exactly would be given preference over the two. Because a lot of times we do have personal law speaking on some different issue and the government of India's parliamentary law speaking on some different issue, but it is the Supreme Court that usually has to take the final call. Perfect. Let's move on to the next topic that we have. Topic number 3 that we have for you today is from the Reward Project. Now, Reward Project, in very simple terms, it is a project with respect to integrated watershed management. Now, what is watershed management? Let's try and understand this. What is watershed management? Watershed management in very simple terms means how exactly is it that you can make the best use of water, that you can conserve water, you can harvest water, you can store it for later on use. All of that comes under the category of watershed management. The reason why it is in the news is the World Bank is getting a lot of sub-Saharan farm officials to Karnataka to learn from its watershed model. So the Supreme Court actually has, or not so Supreme Court, sorry, the World Bank has realized that Karnataka government in India has done a very, very good job when it comes to water harvesting. Now, it's not just Karnataka, there are many other states that are doing a good job. For example, in Tamil Nadu, if you are from the state of Tamil Nadu, you would know the government has now made it compulsory that if you are now building a new home in Tamil Nadu, it is compulsory that it should have water harvesting. Now, I'm sure most of you would know what is water harvesting. Those who don't know what is water harvesting, in simple terms, let's say there is rainfall that is happening, the water that falls, you should be able to collect it somewhere on your terrace or ground and then store it most probably underground so that later on you can use the same water for your personal requirements. That is called rainwater harvesting. So you save that water so that it can be used later on. Many state governments, as I said, for example, Tamil Nadu have made it compulsory. Many state governments have been doing this. Now, why is the World Bank interested in this? As you know, the World Bank is the international institution that provides loans mainly for developmental projects. So World Bank provides loans for rainwater harvesting projects also around the entire world. And they don't just provide loan. The World Bank also ensures, or they have to make sure, that nations around the world are using their money in the best possible manner, and the project that will be made using that money becomes a success. So World Bank now wants the African officials to come to Karnataka to learn from there and see how rainwater harvesting, how water conservation can be done. This project, in short, is called a reward project. Now, what is the entire point of reward? The reward project stands for rejuvenating watershed for agriculture resilience through innovative development scheme. Under this scheme, we have a situation where Karnataka's efforts in rainwater harvesting have been appreciated. Karnataka, in fact, has been identified as a lighthouse partner by the World Bank on their watershed development project. Now, as I told you, watershed development includes a lot of activities, mainly around rainwater conservation, mainly about using water for various purposes. In a country such as India, it is extremely important for various purposes. First, as you know, the level of groundwater in India is declining at a very fast pace. It is at a very, very alarming pace. India is one of those countries which is blessed with a lot of rainfall. We have a lot of rainfall in almost every parts of the country in different months. If we can't use that water, if we can't save that water, preserve that water for future use, that is when the problem starts. Because as per many experts, if India is successful in preserving all the rainfall that falls in our country, India will not have any problem about our groundwater level decreasing. It is only because we are not appropriately using the rainwater that is falling on India that we have these kind of issues. That is why it becomes so important. You would have seen countries around the world now facing a problem. You have seen many big cities running out of water. In fact, why to go anywhere else? Look at Chennai. A few years back, you saw what happened in Chennai, where the entire city almost was closed down. People were told to stay at homes, companies were closed, offices were closed because there was no water. People were told to stay at their home and work from there because we don't have enough water. Such kind of scenes are now seen around the world because we are not making the best use of the rains that are actually naturally giving us all the water back. That is why the governments of Karnataka, the governments of Tamil Nadu, etc. are now working to make sure that we can actually use as much water from the rains as possible. Watershed management not just increases the quantity of water for use at a later stage, it also ensures that water quality also improves. The reward project that we just discussed, it aims to help national and state institutions improve their watershed management, and in turn they help the farmers to have better supply of water. These kind of questions like reward project, etc., the word reward, these are important facts for the prelims examinations. As you know, the government of India is very fond of making short forms of a lot of government schemes. So these kind of short form, reward project, bind program, etc., are very relevant. So make sure that you do remember this. This reward project is implemented in India, not just in Karnataka, but in multiple states. In fact, this is being implemented in 4 Indian states with the help of the World Bank. The World Bank is the one that has been giving the funding. It is used to prevent soil runoff, to regenerate natural vegetation, to enable multi-cropping, and also have diverse agricultural activities as well. Now, this integrated watershed management program, it's an old program running in India since 2009-10. It's not a new program. Multiple governments have come, multiple governments have gone. It is since 2009 that this program has been running. In fact, it is the world's second largest watershed program after China's. The objective is very simple: make use of water, make use of water preservation techniques, and then use it in our agricultural field, and make sure that whenever we have any decline in the groundwater level, we make use of these kind of techniques to revive that. The government of India's objective was to cover 55 million hectares of rain-fed land by 2027. So the idea was by 2027, 55 million hectares of land should be covered under this project, meaning that rainwater appliances, equipment, etc. should be set up in this large area of land by 2027. Many nations around the world are doing the same, including China. As you saw, just a few months back in China, there were huge droughts. Many parts of the country in China were dry, they were not getting any water. So nations around the world are realizing the importance of this. This integrated watershed management program in India is financed by central and the state governments, mostly by 90:10 ratio. And they have been giving a boost to agriculture mainly with the help of these kind of initiatives, mainly being run by the World Bank. I want to give you some other examples as well of different states running different projects. For example, there is a project called Haryali. It is a watershed development project sponsored by the central government, mainly to enable rural population to conserve water. Do remember the name Haryali. This will be executed by state governments or by Gram Panchayats with people's participation. Then in case of Andhra Pradesh, we have a project called Neeru Meeru. Translated to English, this is called Water and You. This is in Andhra Pradesh. Then we also have Arvari Pani in Rajasthan. We also have the state example of Tamil Nadu, where they have made it compulsory in new kind of housing structures to have water harvesting capacity. So it's not just Karnataka, many other governments are doing a very, very good job when it comes to rainwater harvesting for different types. This is a kind of question that you can expect from here. Robust implementation of integrated watershed management program may be the answer to India's water crisis. Do you agree? Comment. Let me take a few questions from this part before we go ahead. Okay. Nikhil is saying, how would the introduction of previous question be with regards to time and space? So in the previous question, you are not expected to give introduction on time and space. Focus on women issues as the introduction part also. So introduction part can be that women issue or women have been facing multiple issues over the centuries, although the nature of those challenges has changed, but there are still a lot of issues that women have been facing in the society. Then I have a question from, just a second, okay. I have a question from Sakshi. How can write means answer regarding age issue of women and marriage of them, also including consideration of the article and rights? Again, it depends on the kind of question. I cannot generically give you a kind of answer that you will copy paste in every question. So it depends on what exactly the question is. If the question, for example, is that what will be the implication of marrying of girls at a younger age, then you're expected to write about social issues, you're expected to write about patriarchal society, you're expected to write about their health concerns, etc. If the question is about what will be the impact on the society, or if the question is about how can we bring a change, then you have to give examples of government initiatives, etc. So it really depends on what kind of a question is. We can't have a generic answer of how can we write about marriage and women in every answer. Then I have another question from Aman. Why didn't China invest for mineral exploration in Afghanistan in the pre-Taliban era? Is it so that they're investing in Taliban government only? What are the strategic benefits? No, no, no. It's not that they never consulted earlier. They, in fact, had invested in Afghanistan government as well when there was a democratic elected government. Just that when China or other countries invested in the Afghanistan government, the democratic government, did not make such a big news because it is a first big foreign investment when the Taliban regime has come back. That is why it has been a bigger news. It's not that China did not invest earlier. Even before that, China did invest earlier as well. Okay. Then I have a question from Sakshi. Can acts like POSCO be superior to personal laws? No, not really. No. See, POSCO is about mainly stopping exploitation of different types, sexual exploitation. That will not be superior to personal laws. Perfect. Okay. Let's move on then to the fourth topic that we have for today's webinar. The fourth topic is the Global Risk Report 2023 by the World Economic Forum. So, in simple terms, whenever the World Economic Forum has their summit, before the World Economic Forum summit, they usually present this report, which is called the Global Risk Report. So the 2023 Global Risk Report has come out because the WEF, the World Economic Forum, has started its summit. Now, I'm sure all of you at least would have heard the name the World Economic Forum. As you know, World Economic Forum is this meeting where top economists, many leaders around the world, national leaders come in. They talk about how the economy looks like in the future, what are different types of actions to be taken, etc. So WEF is a meeting that is awaited by experts from all around the world. But the interesting part is, and some of you would know this, WEF is not any government organization. It might look like it is a UN organization or World Bank or anything, but it has no connection with any of these. In fact, it is a non-government organization. It was started by an individual as just a meeting where the top economists will come in and talk about capitalism and how to spread the idea of capitalism. But now it has gained so much stature that although it is not recognized by UN or any international authority, it still sees participation from nations all around the world, with in fact prime ministers and presidents also coming to the World Economic Forum. Now, the World Economic Forum, as I told you before their summit, usually prepares this report. So they have come out with the Global Risk Report of 2023. Now, in this report, as the name suggests, they are talking about what are the major risks that countries around the world are facing. Please do remember, when this report gives major risk, they are not talking about only environmental risk or economic risk or security risk, etc. It is a very generic kind of a report of different type of risks that are involved here that the nations are facing. So the report says in the next 2 years, that is immediately, the risks that the nations around the world are facing are the cost of living is increasing, that is inflation is going up. Then we have natural disasters, extreme weather events, and also geoeconomic confrontation. These are the immediate risks as per the report. Now, if you see these one by one, all of these are something that you are aware of. There is widespread inflation around the world, mainly because when the COVID-19 lockdown was hit all across the world, most developed nations started printing a lot more money and distributing money to their citizens. US did it, UK did it, many other developed nations did it. Because you are just printing money, giving it to people without them having to work, it would obviously increase inflation. And that is a problem that we have now being seen in US and UK. Not just this, because of the Ukraine-Russia war, the price of gas has also increased, the price of oil has increased. So automatically inflation has come up and the cost of living has gone up. In UK, for example, if you see the people's electricity bills, the people's gas bills. So in UK, US and Europe, mainly they have a gas bill also. This gas bill actually is a situation where, just try and understand, if this is the entire city, because in Europe they have very harsh winters. So what happens is, in the middle of cities, we usually have a heating plant. So for example, in the middle of the city, we have a heating plant. So what happens is the government usually heats up the gas here. With the gas, the water is boiled up, it converts into steam, and that is actually sent to houses around the city, so that if they need heat, they can actually use this steam, they can use this heat coming in from the government side. For that, they have to pay a bill. That is the gas bill. So the gas bill in European nations, in UK, etc., has increased considerably. It has almost become double in the past few months, ever since the Ukraine-Russia war has started. Because of the climate change issue, we have increasing number of weather events that are taking place. We have wildfires. We saw the devastating floods in Pakistan. We saw the droughts in China. All these kind of situations are becoming even more frequent. You see what is happening in Joshimat also. Although the issue of Joshimat can't be linked with weather, but you see a situation where a lot of nations are facing frequent natural disasters time and time again. Then the report says in the next 10 years, the challenges will be, if we are not able to fight against climate change, we might see biodiversity loss, we might see the entire collapse of the ecosystem. See, there are different types of debates around the world. It is very easy to see that we should conserve the environment, we should plant more trees, etc. But there's a different side of the story as well. I don't know how many of you know this or not. The story of what happened a few years back in the Amazon forest. You remember there was a fire in the Amazon forest at such a large scale. There were celebrities around the world saying, stop this fire or save Amazon, etc. Remember? Okay. Now let's try and understand what this issue was. So Amazon forest, which are considered as a lung of the entire world, lung of the earth or whatever, there was large scale fire in that. Now there were many different debates in that story. One part of the debate was that Brazil government was not trying to stop the fire, and it was kind of true. The people who were actually trying to stop fire, the fire personnel, the firefighters, they were not even given any equipments, no water was given to them. There were videos that came out that they are trying to stop fire by putting sand with the help of hands. How can you stop such a huge fire by just using your hand and feet? You need more equipment, you need more machinery, but Brazil government did not give it to them. Now, there were other reports as well that Brazil government may have started the fire themselves. Now, why exactly was that the case? The Brazilian president at that time, that is Bolsonaro, he made a statement. He said that if the Amazon forest are the lungs of the earth, then the entire earth should pay Brazil for conserving these forests. The idea was, Brazil was saying that if we actually see, we have a very, very large area where this forest is being grown. If we don't use this area, if we don't cut the forest, we are losing out on industries. So if the entire world wants us to maintain these forests, they should pay us the money, they should pay us some money, and we'll conserve the forest, as simple as that. But the entire world obviously did not do that. That was the entire debate. The Brazil government was saying it is our forest, it is our right to decide whether we want to save it or we want to burn it, so that we can clear the land and make some more industries. The world was saying, no, 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 you should not harm the environment. So the debate between economic progress and environmental conservation is very, very old. This old debate still exists even today. So even right now, when you say, yes, we should fight against climate change, we should not have a lot of development in Joshimat, for example, we should not develop a lot of these things. But the problem is, you, at the end of the day, it is very difficult to say, okay, I will not develop any further. Everyone wants more development, everyone wants to earn more money, everyone wants to have good job. But at the end of the day, you have to understand that in the debate between climate change and economic progress, there has to be a balance somewhere. The report also focuses on India. The report says in case of India especially, the risk that India faces are digital inequality, meaning that at a time when the entire country, entire world is moving towards digital, we still see a big divide between rural and urban India. We see a big divide between rich and the poor in how exactly are they using technology, how exactly are they using digital resources. India would also face issues of geopolitical nature. Confrontation for the resources as well might happen. Many people will start fighting towards the different resources that they want. Rise cost of living will increase. There will be debt crisis, natural disasters, etc. Other kind of technologies such as biotechnology, etc., would also pose a challenge. So this is what the report says about India, that India's challenges also are now being seen in the coming years. The report talks about different types of challenges. The report says there are economic and geopolitical risks with the ongoing Ukraine-Russia war, number one, which is leading to inflation, and also the COVID-19 crisis that has still not been curtailed completely. We have seen what is happening in China. There was just a report, recent report, that said in the coming few months, we might see as many as 9 lakh deaths in China. Now, the way that Chinese government has handled COVID, we are seeing the impact of that all around China. We are seeing what Chinese are facing with all hospitals being filled up, with people not having any place to go, with most of the population has no immunity towards COVID. As per the report, that will only increase. At the global level, even the debt levels are increasing. The cost of living is increasing. So all of that has to be curtailed. This report comes in before the World Economic Forum meeting so that in the meeting, these issues can be discussed. Most of these risks are interconnected. If one country is facing these kind of issues, the other countries will also face it. For example, when there were such bad floods in Pakistan, there were some people in India who were very happy. Oh, very good, very good. Pakistan should have floods. But we should understand, floods don't come specifically for one nation. If it is Pakistan today, it can very well be India tomorrow. The climate change issue is not specifically limited to one single nation altogether. All these things in a globalized world are interconnected. If inflation is increasing, if the cost of living is increasing, it is actually having an impact on all the nations around the world. So nations would have to come together and take a call on this, on how to fight against it. If the developed nations have to give money to developing nations, so be it. If the developed nations have to cut down on their emissions, so be it. But if we don't fight against it together, we might have a situation where there is no coming back later on. This is the same info in the form of infographic from the World Economic Forum, where they have listed 10 biggest global risks of the next 2 years and the next 10 years. In the next 2 years, the risk, as I told you, is increasing cost of living, natural disasters, extreme weather patterns, then geoeconomic confrontation, failure to mitigate climate change, erosion of social cohesion. Societal polarization means polarizing the society, people fighting against each other, large-scale environmental damage, failure to change, failure to adapt to climate change, etc. I'm not saying that you have to remember the entire list, but these kind of phrases are very important for your mains examination. If you are not able to remember all 10, at least try and remember at least 3 to 4 of these so that you can quote this in your environment or in other kind of papers in the mains examination whenever there is a question about the different types of issues that we are facing and what exactly are we trying to achieve. The report also gives certain recommendations. It says that yes, we are facing a lot of challenges, but this is how we can actually fight against it. Number one, strengthening the global risk preparedness and cooperation. Nations coming together, collaborating with each other, helping each other whenever there is a crisis. Risk identification, rather than waiting for some disaster to strike us, being ready for it, being prepared for it. Investing more in risk preparedness. Let's not wait for disaster. For example, we saw what happened with COVID. When COVID-19 hit not just India but the entire world, we suddenly realized that healthcare infrastructure is not up to the mark. We suddenly realize that we have hospitals which don't even have enough infrastructure in terms of oxygen supply or beds, etc. It is then that more and more money started flowing into healthcare, although that has stopped again. But rather than waiting for disaster to happen, stay one step ahead, expect what the challenges would be, and then fight against it. Rethink the future risk, think about what can be different types of risks that we are facing in the future. This report, as I told you, is published by the World Economic Forum, usually before their meeting in Davos. Davos is the place in Switzerland where the meeting is held, the World Economic Forum meeting, which has started. It's a resort in Davos where the meeting is held. World Economic Forum, as I told you, is not recognized by UN, not recognized by World Bank. It is a standalone non-governmental organization starting in 1991. It's a not-for-profit organization. It mainly started to discuss about capitalism. The idea was how to spread capitalism all around the world. But now it has become a situation where nations and leaders around the world come and discuss different types of issues. These are the other reports that the WEF or the World Economic Forum publishes. Do remember, this is an important fact for prelims examination. In prelims examination, you do see these kind of questions asked. They'll give you a name of a report and they'll ask you who publishes these kind of reports. So do remember some of these names as well. This is a kind of practice question that you can expect. What are some of the biggest global risks nations are facing in the next 5 years? Elaborate with special reference to India. So you can take examples of these kind of reports and give examples of what are challenges that we are facing. Okay, let me see a few questions before going forward. Mansi had a question. Isn't it kind of cowardly or irresponsible for the government to leave the hard decisions to religion up to the Supreme Court? Is Supreme Court being used for controversial decisions? See, let's not call it cowardly, let's call it political. So it's a very common thing that has been happening for many decades now. What is happening is whenever any government in power believes that any of their decision might not go well with their voter base, irrespective of whatever government it is. If the government thinks that certain decision would anger the voters, and I'll give you many examples. Talk about homosexuality. Now in India, you will see about homosexuality, governments don't really say anything about it. They don't say yes, they don't say no. They leave it to the judiciary. Because this is one of those topics where the government feels, irrespective of whatever they say, they will anger some people, so they don't want to take a risk. So they usually have the strategy on these kind of things, they leave it to the Supreme Court. Whatever Supreme Court says, they are fine with it, so that they can tell the people, see, we did not do that. The court does it. I wouldn't call it cowardly. It's in a democracy, that is how usually governments work, when they don't want to take a chance with their voters. So it's a very usual occurrence. Okay. Then I have a question. Sudeepto has a question. It's a long question. It is fine for different regions to have their own personal laws, but a good analysis of personal laws of all religions is required, because there are various derogatory provisions which lead to increase in child and mother mortality, etc. Won't such an analysis strengthen our law, order, and HDI? Okay. See, I'll just clarify something. Please understand. India does not have uniform civil code. All of you know this. India does not have uniform civil code. That is right. However, that does not mean that we don't have the same civil laws, or that doesn't mean that government does not interfere in civil laws. That's a misconception. Governments do interfere in civil laws. For example, the government of India has banned untouchability. The government of India has banned triple talaq. The government of India has banned sati. So it's not that religious practices are left alone by the government. Government does analyze and make certain changes in personal laws also when they feel it is necessary. It's not that they don't do that. There are some points that are considered too personal and government things that people from different regions would not want governments interference, so they don't interfere. But let's not have this misconception that governments don't interfere in personal laws in India. They do. For a lot of things, personal laws have been changed in India, although we don't have a uniform civil code. But it's not like every law is different. So let's not have that confusion. Okay? Perfect. let's move on to the next topic that we have. The next topic is about the GSP. GSP stands for Generalized System of Preferences. Let's try and understand what is this in very simple terms. Now, the United States of America, they have a law under which they have decided that they have chosen some developing nations and least developed nations. And they decided that if products are imported in America from these group of nations, so they have decided a list of nations which includes India as well, and they have decided if these nations send some product to the US, USA will not impose any taxes on those, so that trade can improve. This is called GSP, Generalized System of Preferences. This is the simple idea. Let me repeat. USA made a list of countries saying that we want to help them. So if these countries send some product to USA, USA says we will not impose taxes on you so that your product can easily come to American markets and it can be sold. This is called GSP, Generalized System of Preferences. There are two important things that you have to remember in this idea of GSP. First important thing, the list of countries does not include all the countries around the world. USA decides which country they want to help and which country they don't want to help. It's a long list. Very many nations are included in that list, but it is not a list which has all the countries, number one. India is in that list or was in that list or whatever. On the other hand, let's say India is in that list, that Indian products coming to USA will not impose taxes. That does not mean that every Indian product will have zero taxes. That is not the case. The government of USA chooses that from these countries, these are the products, 5 or 10 products or 20 products. On these products, we will not put any taxes. So it's not a complete zero tax policy. No, that is not the case. Few products of few nations are chosen. They are given preferences. US government says we will not impose taxes on you. Don't worry. This is called Generalized System of Preferences in simple terms. Okay. Now let's come back to what is the connection with India. Now, when Donald Trump was the president of the US, he started saying that countries such as India and China are misusing USA's policies. Why is it so? See, the interesting part is some countries say, let's say India says we are a developing country, while some other countries say we are developed countries. The interesting part is there is no definition of what will be a developed country or what will be a developing country. There is no definition by anyone. Meaning that if tomorrow India announces that from today onwards we are a developed country, then nothing will change. No one can say anything. It is the country that itself decides whether they want to be called a developed country or a developing country. Please understand this. There is no definition given anywhere in WTO or UN, whatever, that you are a developing country or a developed country. The government itself decides. So tomorrow, if the government says that we are a developed country from today, then nothing will happen. Everything will remain the same. The reason why we call ourselves a developing nation is that when we call a developing nation, then they get certain preferences like GSP. USA will not give such a preference to a developed country. Also, when we call ourselves a developing nation, we are able to get a lower rate of interest from World Bank, etc. So that is why we usually stick to developing only. But tomorrow we can switch to developed, nothing will happen, no one will say anything. So what happened was when Donald Trump was the American president, he started saying that India, China, these are developed nations actually. They are just portraying an image of a developing nation, but they should ideally be called developed nations. They are taking misadvantage of our good nature. Donald Trump said that India, China, these countries don't deserve any subsidy, etc. So Donald Trump announced that India will be taken out of GSP. Donald Trump announced India will be taken out of GSP. He said one more thing. He said that India, if India does not want to be coming out of GSP, He said that if India wants to continue in the GSP, then India should also announce that they will not impose taxes on some American products. Which American product was he talking about? He was very concerned about Harley Davidson bike. All of you would have heard about this, I'm sure. Harley Davidson bikes. I don't know how much do they cost now. Last time I checked, I think 4 or 5 years ago. The base model started 6.5 lakhs. No, I think base model started 8 lakhs. 4, 5, 6 years ago. Now I don't know how much do they cost. If you're a bike enthusiast, you would know. So basically, Harley Davidson bikes base model started from 7.5 lakhs. A lot of that cost is the taxes that government of India has imposed. So these Harley Davidson bikes, they get manufactured in US, they come here in India, and then they are sold. So government of India puts a very high tax on that. So Donald Trump told Indian government, remove tax from Harley Davidson bikes. Otherwise, I will remove you from GSP. So Indian government said, okay, remove us, we don't mind. So Donald Trump said India will not be in GSP now. Now, the reason why it is in the news is government of India wants to come back to this system of GSP. Okay, many people in the chat are saying that the base model now is 10 lakhs, 12 lakhs, 8 lakhs. I don't know, whatever cost is, I have not checked. I'm over that phase when I wanted this bike. There's a phase in your life when you want these kind of things. When you're above that phase and you don't care how much the cost of the bike is. Right now, I don't care what the cost of the bike is. Anyway, so basically the reason why it is in the news again is that now India wants to be back in the GSP. Remember this, when India was taken out of GSP, the government of India specifically said that we are not really concerned. Why? Because the products of India that were given exemption under GST were not many products. Only few products were given this exemption. So Indian government was not having much of a difference as such. But now we just want to go back into this system so that Donald Trump now is back and we want to come back into this. This is the simple news why it is actually back. Now, the GSP, as I told you, it is a US trade preference program under which they eliminate a lot of taxes from a group of nations, not from all products, only on certain products which they feel are required in America at a good price. India's GSP status, I told you, was eliminated because USA thought that India is not reciprocating the same. India is not reducing tax on Harley Davidson, other kind of super bikes, etc. India said that Harley Davidson, etc. are bikes which only very rich people can buy. So they can afford to pay taxes. See, when the government is deciding on which product should be cut down the taxes, the entire sensible thing is not to cut down taxes on those products which people can already buy. See, if you are very rich, if you can buy a Louis Vuitton bag, LV bag for rupees 5 lakh, government can sell the same for 6 lakh and take 1 lakh as the tax also. Simple. That is the government's idea. That if you can buy a bag for 5 lakh, might as well buy it for 6 lakh, give 1 lakh to the government. So government of India, for example, will not really take away taxes from uber rich products or these luxurious products. So it was never sensible for the government to remove taxes from these kind of Harley Davidson bikes. They may remove taxes from two-wheelers, from affordable cars, etc., but not from these kind of bikes. So government of India was or had come out of the GSP. Now, the impact was that India was or used to be the largest beneficiary of GSP at that point of time. After that, those Indian products, because they were imposed taxes, so they became slightly costlier in US. But that does not mean that India-US trade decreased considerably. They did not have any negative impact as such on the India-US trade. It is still the same. However, just that those particular products became slightly expensive. So their market in the US slightly declined. And that is why we want to come back to this system. The bilateral trade here between India and USA has in fact gone close to $120 billion now. The great part about India-US trade is, for India especially, is that it is usually in favor of India. With China, our trade deficit has reached $100 billion now. With USA, usually we have a trade surplus only. So with USA, usually it is India that exports more things as compared to what our import is. This is what GSP is in short, as you can see here. As I told you, India did not have a lot of products on this list. For example, India's concessions on the entire GSP, the concession that India got were only about $190 million. Now, $190 million might sound like a big number to you, but in the larger context of things, $190 million worth of tax concession is not a very big tax concession. That time, the Indian government was not really worried that if you want to bring us out of GSP, you can, but we will still impose taxes on your Harley Davidson bike because we can't have that. This is a kind of question that you can expect from here. The generalized system of preferences, despite lower numbers, has a lot of significance for India. Do you agree? Critically analyze. Okay. Perfect. Let's see a few questions before we take this up. Arun is saying GSP violates WTO norms. No. So GSP does not violate WTO norms. There are various reasons for that. See, when WTO says that you should have trade, you should trade on similar terms or you should not discriminate, WTO also allows special treatment being given to developing and least developed nations. So this kind of a trade preference program being run by USA, it is not for one specific country first. Secondly, it is mostly in line with the idea that developing and least developed nations should have access to the market. When you say that WTO norms are violated, that is mostly when these kind of programs are run without any specific criteria of how are you choosing the countries. When you randomly decide that, that is when WTO norms are violated. Shagufta is saying, if someone will give you this bike, will you not take? I will take it definitely. I'll put it on OLX, sell that bike second day at a loss of 50,000, take the cash money and then go on a vacation. I'll take it definitely. Then I have a question from Ane. According to you, any definition for developing in developed country? No. According to me, I don't think there has to be. I don't know. There's no definition as such. Doesn't matter according to me or not. I can just tell you a fact. There's no definition of developing or developed country. As far as I'm concerned, I don't think India should be a developed country right now. Our per capita income is still very, very low. Just take an example. Our per capita income is just about $2,100 right now. For China, China's per capita income is 5 times of India, about $10,000. More than that, Taiwan's per capita income is 5 times that of China, $50,000. So India still has a long way to go in terms of per capita income, etc. Though I don't think India is anywhere near being a developed nation altogether. Perfect. Perfect. The next topic that we want to take up is from environment. Ozone hole is filling up. Congratulations to you. Good news finally, after all this bad news that we have been discussing. Ozone layer, as you know, is filling up at a good pace, which is a good news coming up. And this whole of the ozone layer over Antarctica and other parts of the world is filling up at a slow pace. The experts say that it will be healed up completely by 2066. The UN-backed report named Scientific Assessment of Ozone Depletion 2022 has said this. It's a year-on-year thing. Every single year there is an improvement. Ever since we have the Montreal Protocol, has come into picture, which has banned ozone depleting substances. Since then, we have a good healing journey of the ozone, and as for scientists, by 2066 it will be complete. I'm sure all of you know the significance of ozone. Ozone is significant because it filters most of the harmful UV rays, the UV rays that come in from the sun. If all of that is allowed to hit our surface, it will lead to a lot of disastrous impact on our skin cancer, etc. So most of the harmful UV rays are filtered. That is because of the ozone layer. This is where the ozone layer is. As you can see, this is in the stratosphere. After the troposphere, that is when we have the ozone layer. Do remember that location of the ozone as well. Now, the most important thing with respect to ozone layer depletion and ozone layer filling up once again is a very important protocol called the Montreal Protocol. It is regarded as the only and the most successful environment treaty ever. No other environmental treaty has actually been able to achieve its goal. All of the environment treaties are a lot of talks and promises, we'll do this, we'll do that. But one environmental treaty that actually has been able to achieve its goal and is on path to become 100% success is the Montreal Protocol. What was this protocol? This protocol of 1987 decided that the country should phase out production of all the ozone depleting substances. That is why HFCs, that is hydrofluorocarbons, replace the chlorofluorocarbons. So chlorofluorocarbons that were used industrially in a lot of different varieties, all of these were replaced by hydrofluorocarbon. Let me write it here. HFCs are hydrofluorocarbons. So chlorofluorocarbons were removed. Now the problem here is, yes, hydrofluorocarbons do not deplete the ozone. That is fine. On the other hand, they are not very good for the environment. Please understand. Hydrofluorocarbons, they don't cause ozone depletion, but they are still a very powerful greenhouse gas, meaning that they don't harm the ozone layer, but they still increase the global temperature of the earth. So yes, we are trying to fix one problem. We are putting band-aid on one of our wounds, but we are taking that band-aid out of the other wound that we had in the same body. So at a time when we are healing up the ozone layer, at the same time, we are still increasing the global temperature of the earth. About 99% of these substances have been phased out, and these ozone depleting substances will actually now be replaced or have almost been replaced entirely. Because of this, we have also been able to ensure that some of these substances which were harming the environment even more, at least they were curtailed. Montreal Protocol still remains, as I told you, one of the only successfully implemented environmental treaties. Now, first, if the ozone layer actually is healed up completely, can you give credit to the nations around the world? Can you give credit to scientists? The short answer is yes. Whenever we have an environmental convention, whenever we have any environmental meeting, mostly countries don't agree with each other on a lot of things. But the good part is with Montreal Convention, at least all of them agreed that yes, Montreal Protocol, ozone layer depletion is something that we have to abide by. And almost all countries in the world have to be given credit for that, that they have been able to eradicate the use of ODS. ODS is ozone depleting substances. So that is a positive sign. Positive sign in the sense that if countries around the world can come together on this issue, maybe they can come together on other issues as well, such as global warming, etc. But it remains to be seen in the long run. However, at the same time, healing up the ozone layer was easier. But doing the same with global warming might not be that easy. See, we were able to ban these substances which were harming the ozone layer because we had alternatives to that. If we did not have alternatives to that, then the situation would have been very different. The problem in case of fossil fuels is the reason why most nations are not able to get rid of fossil fuels is because there are no credible alternatives to that. We do not have a lot of alternatives that we can use in place of fossil fuel. Yes, we are going towards renewable energy, but we are still far, far away from replacing the energy generation by fossil fuel. So you can be very optimistic and say that the same kind of treaty can be signed to remove fossil fuels from around the entire world, but that is not always true because we don't have a lot of credible alternative in place of fossil fuel as such. The other part is, in terms of fossil fuels, we still need energy 24/7. See, we have solar energy, we have wind energy, etc., but none of that provides 24/7 energy. All of these are dependent somewhere on the environment. Yes, you can have solar at a time in the sunshine, you can have wind when the wind is flowing, But if you want to ensure that you have electricity whenever you want, you have energy whenever you want, coal is still the preferred option in India and in many nations around the world. So to opt out and to think that we will be able to replace fossil fuel very soon will not really be a reality. This is a kind of question that you can expect here. Does healing of the ozone layer point towards the success of climate change initiatives, or nations are claiming more credit for this than they deserve? Comment. So this is where you have to write about climate change debate, and are the nations going on the correct path with respect to climate change initiatives? Let's see if I have any questions before I move on to the next topic. I have a question from Cover. Why ozone depleted over Antarctica despite there being less population? So basically the thickness of ozone is different in different areas. It doesn't really depend on the population. Ozone basically is present in different thicknesses. So the thickness of Antarctica is the thinnest, the shortest, and that is why that was the area that was targeted first. Okay. I'll take one more question, then I'll go ahead. Tripti is saying, can you brief on Vienna Convention? So basically, see, there's a difference between convention and protocol. Vienna Convention, for example, was a convention under which Montreal Protocol was signed. So the Montreal Protocol that we have was a part of Vienna Convention. So in a convention, there may be multiple protocols that are signed. Convention would be a much larger meeting. Under this, the Montreal Protocol was signed to have or to put a ban on those substances which were depleting the ozone layer, in simple terms. Perfect. The next article we want to discuss is from Europe. Europe finally has decided to shift towards LNG. LNG is liquefied natural gas. They will move towards liquefied natural gas as a substitute to Russian gas. Now, as you know, before the war or even today, Western Europe especially is dependent heavily on the import of gas from Russia. Because Europe actually faces very, very harsh winters, and I showed you earlier as well, most European countries have the central heating system, where in the middle of the city you have these gas supply which will actually generate heat. Heat will be supplied to houses in the entire city. Russian gas was always considered as a lifeline for Europe, mainly in winters, and their winter season is coming up. Now, Europe has always been a recipient of Russian gas for a very, very long time. Russian gas has usually been cheap. It has been very affordable for Europe. But because of the Ukraine-Russia war, because of the sanctions that have been imposed on Russia, Europe has now been looking for different alternatives. Finally, one alternative that they have found is that they will now start using liquefied natural gas. From where will they start using? They will actually start importing it from USA. They already have started importing it from USA, with Germany importing it in large numbers. Now, there are various ways to look at this situation right now. First, how to look at it? Number one, see, Europe was being criticized by many people, including many in India, that Europe is very hypocritical. Why? On one hand, Europe is saying that nations around the world, India, China, should not buy oil and gas from Russia. On the other hand, Europe was still continuing to buy gas from Russia. So Europe had to set an example, and Europe had to say to the world, let's see, we are now not buying gas from Russia, number one. Secondly, if Europe had to ensure that their sanctions are successful, they had to stop buying oil from Russia. So now they have shifted to LNG. Now, what is the problem with LNG? First problem, it is obviously more expensive than the Russian gas. It is more expensive than the Russian natural gas that they were using. First. Second, LNG actually harms the environment more than the natural gas coming in from Russia. So Russian natural gas was more environmental friendly. The liquefied natural gas would not be as friendly to the environment. Now that is a big, big concern. Why? See, whenever we have global climate change summits, we usually see Europe is the one that acts as the big boss. Europe is the one that tells the entire world, follow our example. We are the ones who are doing the most for climate change. You are not doing this. India, you are not stopping your emissions. China, your factory should be closed down. Look at us. We are doing everything right. And now the same Europe that was an example to the world is now actually going to a path where their environment would be compromised, even though they have to spend more money with that. So this is now the first time that Europe actually is facing negative consequences of the Ukraine-Russia war. So far, Europe was mainly about lip service, talking that this should not happen, that should not happen. But finally, Europe is seeing that there is a negative impact on the war that has reached them. Germany, in fact, has already imported gas, and their gas bills has reached about $212 billion. It is expected that their gas bill for the consumer, for the common man in Germany, will almost double now. It will almost double now, just because of Germany now having to import the liquefied natural gas. Now, the one other part of the problem here is, especially with respect to Germany. See, Germany takes a lot of pride in establishing itself as the leader of Europe. You would see Germany has taken a lot of initiatives where they want other European nations to follow them. For example, in terms of climate change, in terms of going towards renewable energy, Germany has always been a leader. They were the ones who shut down all their coal power plants. In fact, there's a very, very funny story here. What happened was, and I might have told this to you earlier as well, Germany, in fact, last year told South Africa that you should not burn coal. We will give you money so that you can switch to renewable form of energy. Germany actually gave $700 million to South Africa, saying that please don't burn coal, we will give you money. Now, after the war, because Germany itself did not have gas from Russia, Germany went back to South Africa to buy their coal. So the same South Africa to which Germany was saying, please don't burn coal, it is harmful for the environment. The same Germany is now going back to South Africa to buy coal so that they can burn it. In fact, Germany was the first country in Europe to shut down most of their coal power plants. They had made a law that they will shift 100% towards renewable energy. The same Germany now is opening up its coal power plants as thermal power plants because of this ongoing war. So the situation has changed in Europe drastically. Germany has to take a different policy stand. They have to spend much, much more money. And this liquefied natural gas would also have an impact on their fight against climate change, since it emits 10 times more emission than the piped gas coming in from Russia. Also, this LNG infrastructure would have to be built. See, entire Europe had very good pipeline connectivity with Russia. The reason being that they had been taking Russian gas for a long, long time. So they did not have an issue with that. Now that they are substituting that with LNG coming in from US, so a lot of new infrastructure will have to be built. Although that new infrastructure later on can be used for green hydrogen, etc. as well. But right now, a lot of new infrastructure will have to be built. This LNG, that is the liquefied natural gas that we have, is in a liquid state, and it is kept in liquid state through very intense cooling of minus 161 degrees Celsius. Because we have to keep it at such a low temperature, it is not very cheap. It is at a very, very expensive rate. Also, this is made up of methane, which is a very, very potent greenhouse gas. Because of this, when you use this eventually to produce energy, you will have a lot of methane emissions into the atmosphere. That is why experts are saying that this is a step back in the fight against climate change that Germany has taken, but they have no other option. LNG has or is twice as much greenhouse gases as ordinary natural gas that was coming in from Russia. It emits 14 times as much carbon as solar power when producing this amount of energy, and 50 times as much carbon as compared to the wind power. So all of these combined, meaning that Germany or entire Europe right now is facing issues in their fight against climate change, and they have to decide which side do they have to compromise on. Do they have to compromise on their fight against climate change, or do they have to compromise on their fight against Russia? For now, their decision is that we would want to contribute, or we can compromise on our fight against climate change, but we do not want to compromise on our fight against Russia. Let's see if in the future also Europe is able to sustain on the same strategy, or do they want to change the strategy in the coming years after seeing the harmful impact on the environment. These are the kind of questions that you can expect. What are the possible consequences of Europe choosing liquefied natural gas over the Russian gas supply? Let's see if you can answer this. Try and answer this in 150 words as well. I have a question from Sakshi. Are the solutions figured out for these risks coming up in next 2 to 10 years? Is there any scheme for which the nations together can work for it, like Montreal Protocol? See, nations are working together for it. It's not that they are not. We see multiple climate change summits coming up. But again, as I told you earlier, there's a big difference between this ozone layer problem and the problem of using fossil fuels for energy production. The reason why the countries were able to come together and work towards healing of ozone layer was simple, that there were alternatives available to the countries. They were told, if you don't use, let's say, chlorofluorocarbons, in place of that, you can use some other substances. In terms of fossil fuel, that alternative is not really available in large numbers. Yes, the nations are moving towards solar, wind, different forms of energy right now, but again, that is not as sustainable as a fossil fuel. So unless there is a very huge discovery all of a sudden in the field of renewable energy, all of a sudden overnight fossil fuels will not go away. I'll just give an example. We hear a lot about India making a lot of progress in solar energy, right? That India has done wonderful job in solar. That is true. India has been expanding a lot on our solar energy production. But even today, most of our energy still comes from coal only. Despite all the news that you hear about solar, despite all these things that are said about solar, that solar is the future, India has become a leader, etc. All that is true. But even then, most of our energy needs are still fulfilled by coal only. So we have a long way to go. It's not that nations are not coming together. They are coming together. But again, the requirements that we have for fossil fuel are so huge that they cannot be replaced very soon. Let's come to the next topic. Those who are asking, this is the second last topic. We have 9 topics in total today. 9th one is very short. This is the second last one. Okay. The next topic is what happened in Tamil Nadu. One of the biggest news stories around the country. Now, what happened in Tamil Nadu, I'm sure all of you would know by now. As you know, when we have the first session of the assembly, or when we have the first session of the parliament in the year, in the very first session in the parliament, the President of India comes and makes a joint address. At the state level, the governor comes, makes an address to the assembly. This is called the governor's address. When they read this speech, when they read the address, they are not speaking from their mind. They are given a written speech by their Council of Ministers. The governor or the president is expected to just read the speech and not deviate from it. The reason why it is in the news is 9th of January, we had the first meeting of the year in the Tamil Nadu Assembly. The governor of Tamil Nadu, Mr. R.N. Ravi, was there. He was giving his address. This address obviously was given to him, written by the state cabinet. When he was reading it, he did not read a few lines from it. He skipped a few lines, which angered the government, which angered the chief minister. The chief minister right there passed a resolution against the governor saying that this should not have happened. Governor became very angry, and even before the national anthem was played, governor left the assembly. As simple as that. This was the news. Now, it's very interesting because it is not for the first time that a governor, chief minister have come face to face. In fact, in the past few years, it has become quite a trend, especially the states which are ruled by those parties which are not at the center government. So parties which are opposite to the BJP in those states, we have seen how the governors have been confronting the chief ministers. This is Tamil Nadu. Kerala has become again a hub where chief minister and governor are face to face. Pinarayi Vijayan, the chief minister, Mohammad Arif Khan, the governor. Our vice president, Shri Jaideep Dhankar, when he was the West Bengal governor, we saw his confrontation with the West Bengal chief minister. We see what is happening in Punjab. We see what is happening in different states across the country. The common thread is that all those states where you have a political party, which is not a party ruling at the center, you have a situation where the governor and the chief minister are not going along well. And this has now brought a lot of debate into the matter. Number one, the role of the governor. Can the governor act on his own discretion or not? Now, the constitution is very, very clear on this. Even the Supreme Court has reiterated time and time again. The governor has to act on the aid and advice of the Council of Ministers, except on those matters where his discretion can be used. Now, what are those matters where the discretion of the governor can be used? Those matters are not defined properly. The governor can decide for himself. Now, if you ask, in the past, has there been occasions where the governors have not spoken the exact speech? Yes, there have been certain occasions. And I'll give you some examples of that. Now, if you actually see how this tradition came to India, as you know, India follows a Westminster model of parliamentary government. Just like in Britain, they have parliamentary form of government. We also have the same. In Britain, it is called the King's Address. Earlier, the Queen's Address, now the King's Address. Now, earlier, it was in UK also, it is the same kind of a concept. The king comes in or the queen comes in, makes a speech in the beginning of the year, and they just read out the speech because it is actually from the side of the government. When the governor speaks or when the president of India makes that speech, they are not talking from their own mind. They are just saying what is the government trying to do in the next year. In the speech, they talk about the government's achievements of the last year and what is it that the government will do in the coming years. There is nothing that they are speaking from their own mind. The prince or the king or the queen also does the same. In fact, in India, our constitution in Article 87 talks about the president's address, and Article 176 talks about the governor's address as well. There have been multiple debates on this issue. Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, the first Prime Minister in 1960, said that this president's address is just a statement of policy from the side of the government only, that the government wants to convey. This question was also asked in Calcutta High Court in 1966. The question was, is it compulsory? Should the governor address be removed or not? The Calcutta High Court said it is compulsory and it is important for the opposition members also. The Calcutta High Court said that the address of the governor gives an opportunity to the opposition members also to listen to what the government is doing so that they can question the government. If they want to hold the government responsible, if they want to hold the government accountable, they should first listen to the speech of the governor and then only they can question. So there has been a lot of debate in the past about this. Now, in UK, the king or the queen has never diverted from their speech. Please remember that. They have never diverted from their speech. In India, there's a long history of it. In the Constituent Assembly, there were many people who spoke on, who discussed multiple issues, and this issue was also discussed. There was a member of the Constituent Assembly, Professor K.T. Shah. He actually said that the governor or the president, apart from reading out the speech, should be given the freedom to include other subjects also in the speech if he or she wants. Let me repeat. Professor K.T. Shah in the Constituent Assembly said that I believe that president should be given the freedom to include other subjects also in the speech apart from the given speech, if they think that it is important. However, it was decided that no, that should not happen. Why? See, the idea is very simple. Let's say the president makes a speech, okay, about the government policies and all the things that the government has achieved. If the opposition members do not like that speech, or if the opposition members have a problem with it. For example, let's say president says that we have achieved this, or we have decreased the child mortality rate, we have decreased unemployment, we have decreased poverty, etc. in the last year. The opposition members say, no, 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 you are lying. This has not happened. If opposition members want to criticize that debate, want to criticize that speech, they are not criticizing the president of India. They are criticizing who? They're criticizing the government actually, not the president of India. So that is why this speech will only bring criticism to the government and not to the president. That is why this speech should only be the words of the government and not the words of president. Because president will not get any criticism from it. It will only be from the side of the government. That is why many people believe that government should give the speech and the president should only say that speech and nothing else should be added from the side of the president. As we discussed, Article 87 talks about this speech that is given at the very first session of the parliament every single year. Do you know in the original constitution, the Article 87 that you see here, in the original constitution, this article said that before the beginning of every session, we have 3 sessions in a year. We have the budget session, we have the monsoon session, we have the winter session. Article 87 originally said that before the beginning of every session, we should have the president's address. Thankfully, in the first constitutional amendment, that was removed. It was thought that that would be too much president address. So let's remove that. The change was that it will be not in every session now. It will only be at the beginning of year. Now, as you know, whenever we have the very first session in the beginning of the year, then we have the president address. And when we have the new Lok Sabha, when the elections have just happened, the new Lok Sabha has come in their very first meeting, then we have the president's address. So president's address that you have are on these occasions. Now, let me give you examples of where has it happened earlier. First question, has it ever happened that the president has decided that I will not read the complete speech? Has the president ever said that I will skip some portion in the speech? No. At the center government level, from the side of the president, this has never happened. President of India has always spoken the entire speech. However, on the other hand, from the governor's side, this has happened once. Let me tell you when. So in 1969, what happened was, governor of West Bengal, the person name was Dharmveer. So Mr. Dharmveer, who was the governor of West Bengal, he was given a speech to read. Now let's try and understand the situation. Mr. Dharmveer was appointed as the governor by the central government, obviously. Central government was the Congress government. So Congress had appointed him as the governor. He was a congressman actually. At the West Bengal level, the state government was UDF, sorry, United Front Government. At the state level, it was a United Front Government. In the speech, just understand this, the United Front Government, the state government gave this speech to governor. In the speech, there were 2 paragraphs. That paragraph said that Congress government in the past was unconstitutional. Why? Because they had removed the West Bengal government without any reason. Let me repeat. The West Bengal government had given the speech to their governor. In the speech, there was a line that said that Congress government at the center did an unconstitutional thing by removing the West Bengal government earlier. Now, do you think the governor will say this? The same governor who was appointed by the Congress government, who was a congressman, would he criticize the Congress central government in his speech? He would obviously not do that. So in his speech, he decided to skip that. He decided to say, no, I will not say this because, again, I don't want to criticize the central government. So there have been certain issues in the past. There have been certain cases in the past where the governors have deviated from the speech. This Tamil Nadu incident is not happening for the first time. As I told you, at the center government level with the president, it has never happened. But with the governor, this has happened in the past. This is not happening for the first time. This again brings into question the role of the governor specifically. There have been so much debate about the role of the governor, whether or not governor should use the discretion, whether or not governor should be politically motivated or not. As you know, the problem is, if you look at the Constitution of India, if you look at the eligibility criteria to appoint the governor, there are only two eligibility criteria to appoint the governor. First eligibility criteria is that the governor should be the citizen of India, and the other eligibility criteria is 35 years of age, nothing else. Apart from these two, there is no other eligibility criteria that the governor has. So there have been multiple commissions in the past: Sarkaria Commission, Panchi Commission, Venkatachalia Commission, ARC. All of that have suggested there should be other criteria as well, like the governor should not be involved in active politics, CM's view should also be taken, so on and so forth. But none of these are laws; those are just conventions. We have been seeing in Supreme Court, there have been multiple cases where the questions have been raised on the role of governor. Many people have even called for abolition of the post of governor as well. We have seen so many examples that are happening right now around India. We see how the governor has come face to face with CM in Kerala, in Telangana. We saw what happened in Maharashtra a few months back. We saw what happened in multiple states, in West Bengal, etc. All these are indication that the role of the governor is now becoming more as an agent of the center government rather than as the constitutional head of the state. This is a kind of question that you can expect. Office of the governor of the state has become increasingly confrontational. Does it justify the demand for abolition of the post altogether? Critically analyze. You can answer this question in about 250 words. Before we begin the last topic for today, let me quickly take up a few questions. Shagufta is saying, if Tamil Nadu government skipped the paragraph, can judiciary do anything in this? No, nothing the judiciary will do. See, the governor skipping a paragraph, etc., will not have any implications. The only implication is every single word that is spoken in the assembly or the parliament, there is a written record that is kept. That is the archive. So if someone after 20 years wants to read what the governor said in his speech 20 years back, they will refer to the official records. So what happened in Tamil Nadu, as soon as the speech ended, the Tamil Nadu chief minister passed a resolution saying that whatever governor said doesn't matter. In the official records, his entire speech should be recorded. So it's not that judiciary will do anything because nothing changes. Just that in the official record for archives, if someone wants to refer to this speech after some days, some years, some decades, they will still see the complete official speech, not what he has said. That is the only change. Judiciary will not impose anything. In case of Tamil Nadu also, just pass a resolution that complete speech should be a part of the archive, nothing else. Let me see if there's some other question, then we'll move ahead. Okay. Then I have a question from Sakshi. Isn't it binding on the governor to read the speech even if discretionary powers are available? Or is it the issue that discretionary powers of governor are not defined? So yes, it is binding on the governor to read the speech. That is why even if they don't read it, in the records, in the official archives, the complete speech will go. Supreme Court has intervened time and time again on such matters. Umang is saying, can we give examples of mentioning the names of other governors? Yes, you can mention the entire thing, not just mention the name. Mention the entire thing in one line. That, for example, you can say that in case of Kerala, we are seeing the governor and the CM coming face to face over the appointment of vice chancellors in the universities. Then you can say in case of Tamil Nadu, governor and the CM coming face to face while in terms of deciding education curriculum matters and in appointment of many other people. So don't just mention names. Along with names, mention what is the issue in one single line. Tehreem is saying, what will be the implication if the office of the governor is abolished? Personally, I don't think there will be any implication. Just that we have a system where center and the state governments run in a same kind of a manner. So office of the governor, for it to be abolished, we have to require a constitutional amendment. That will not be easy. It is almost impossible for the post of the governor to be abolished, because whichever political party comes at the power in the center government level wants to control everything. So governor is a method of controlling the state. So I don't think it is possible to actually remove the office of the governor. That is just a good thought, but I don't think that will happen. No center government would want to have that. When the parties are in opposition, they want the governor post to be removed. When the same party comes to power at the center, they are very happy in appointing the governor. That is the scenario. Anyway, let's start with the last topic that we have. It's a small scheme called the BIND scheme. Mainly, the government of India is trying to improve the coverage and infrastructure of Prasar Bharati. That is the government of India's network, under which we have All India Radio, etc. That will be expanded to have better coverage in border areas, especially along Nepal, Jammu, Kashmir, etc. This BIND stands for Broadcasting Infrastructure and Network Development. So government of India will modernize All India Radio, Doordarshan, all these media channels that are run by the government, especially to ensure that the coverage in the border areas is improved where the coverage is not very good. Also in the left-wing extremist borders, etc., in the strategic borders, the government of India would want to increase their coverage. The reason being, in these areas where the government of India wants to connect with the local people, this is very, very important that the government has a direct connection. See, the people in the border areas are living a very tough life, or living in insurgent areas, people are living a very tough life. They are facing multiple challenges. Many extremists actually try to brainwash them, try to tell them government is doing this against you, government is doing that against you. They try to spread certain rumors. At that point of time, if we have a direct government connection with them, the government can directly communicate with them with the help of Prasar Bharati, with the help of Doordarshan, All India Radio. It will be for their benefit. So government of India wants to reach as many people as possible, so that the government of India can pass on more information, can pass on clear-cut information as possible. The government will also distribute free of cost dish set-up boxes for people living in these areas, so that they are in more connection, more touch with the government, rather than in touch with those people who want to brainwash and who want to force them to think against the government. This BIND scheme, under this, the government will spend about 2,539 crore rupees to modernize, develop infrastructure related to Doordarshan, Prasar Bharati, etc., to reach as many people as possible. These kind of programs are also run by the government of India, as you know, to spread information. For example, just imagine when the government of India takes an important decision. Let's say lockdown has happened, let's say demonetization has happened. When these kind of strategic important decisions are taken, they have to be told across the entire country at the same time. You can't expect half of the population to hear about this, other half saying, I don't know because I don't have TV, I don't have radio, etc. So for that, government of India has to ensure that the coverage or broadcasting of government information is 100% across the entire country. There is one more slight headline that came up a few months back, where the government of India had made it very clear that state governments cannot enter into broadcasting on their own. So some state governments wanted to set up their own kind of channels, their own state TV channels that were happening in certain South Indian states. Government of India announced that they cannot do that. There will be a national broadcaster only, that is Doordarshan, All India Radio. Without the government's permission, the state governments cannot set up their own broadcasting as such. Prasar Bharati, which is in the center of the news, was established as a statutory body in 1997 with an objective to educate and entertain the public. Although now mostly people don't listen to Doordarshan or All India Radio, but the idea initially was to educate and entertain people of the country as much as possible. This is, as I said earlier, very short news, just a factual news about Prasar Bharati and the BIND scheme. This is a kind of question that you can expect. At a time when the state-run media attracts negligible viewership, elaborate on the significance of Prasar Bharati. So you can try and see if you can answer this question as well. This finally brings us to an end of this webinar where we covered 9 topics, some very short, some more elaborate, but I hope all of these have been helpful for you. I'll stay here for a couple of minutes if you have any questions, and then we will end the session quickly. Those who want to leave, thank you so much for joining in. I hope all of you have a good day ahead. Dipankar is saying, what is the meaning of autonomous body? As the name suggests, they have the freedom to work. They are not under any specific ministry taking directions from them. They can have their own guidelines. They can have their own protocols. That is what autonomous body will be. Venki has a question. Give me some pros and cons of India being a developed nation. See, the main con would be that right now we get preferential treatment from some of the nations. Like, for example, Japan invests a lot of money into India, considering us as a developing nation. Many developed nations give us loans at a lower rate of interest. World Bank gives us loan at a lower rate of interest, assuming India is a developing nation. So when we transition to a developed nation, all that benefits will go away. As per what will be the benefit, I don't see a lot of benefits as such, because nothing will change on ground. Gyan is saying, just because the speech is binding on governor, the government can force the governor to speak anything. Is that it's difficult to define what is anything. But yes, if there is something that is illegal, if yes, there is something that is factually incorrect, then yes, the governor would have the power, the governor would have to use his discretion. But as long as the factual things are being used, the governor should have to abide by that. But again, the definition of anything is pretty wide. Anshula is saying, can we say that this gubernatorial activism also applies to LG of New Delhi? Yes, it does. The LG of New Delhi, it's a different situation altogether. The LG of New Delhi, because it's a union territory, the debate there is that the central government says it is our territory only. So we are right in doing whatever we are doing. In case of states, the point put forward by the union government is that we are not controlling the governor. Governor is doing whatever they are doing on their own. In case of Delhi, the union government is very straightforward. They clearly say it is union's territory, so we will do whatever we want. As you know, the case is still going on in the Supreme Court and the matter is still sub judice. Perfect. So this brings us to the end of today's webinar. I hope you learned a lot of new things today. Have a good day ahead. Enjoy your preparation. Make sure that the remaining time period between today and the prelims examinations, you answer as many questions as possible and try and attempt as many prelims test series as possible. Thank you so much for joining in. Bye-bye. Good night. Jai Hind.